My name's Ryan. I'm 44 years old, and I run a small construction outfit just outside Amarillo. Not one of those flashy, big city firms with crews in matching uniforms and trucks with chrome-plated bumpers. Mine's lean, hands-on. We sweat for every dime. I take my coffee black, my tools with rust still on them, and my peace in the rare quiet hours between dusk and collapse. 5 years ago, I married a woman named Linda. I won't dress it up. I loved her. Still do, in some way I can't quite name anymore. She had a softness in her voice, a steadiness in her walk that reminded me of things I'd once believed in. She was practical, unshaken, the kind of woman who made lists for everything and folded the corners of her book pages instead of using a bookmark. Her silence wasn't cold, not at first. It just felt like control, like steadiness. But she didn't come alone. She had a son, Brandon. He was 13 when we met. That hard, jagged age where everything is anger, even if you don't know why. He had a buzz cut and a chip on his shoulder the size of his missing father. A ghost named Mike, long gone by then. No child support, no calls, not even a birthday card. Just a name scratched on a certificate and a drawer of photographs nobody talked about. I stepped into that boy's life with work boots and quiet hope. I didn't come to replace anyone. I wasn't trying to rewrite anything. I just showed up. I took him to practices, paid for doctor visits, argued with teachers when they labeled him difficult. When he got caught fighting at school, it was me sitting in the vice principal's office, jaw clenched, trying to understand where all that rage came from. It didn't happen overnight, but I tried to be a constant presence. A man who stood firm while the rest of the world flinched. I didn't expect a parade. Didn't expect him to call me Dad. Hell, I would have settled for a nod, a look, something that said he saw the hours I bled into that house. I wasn't asking for worship, just recognition. The thing about devotion is that, when it goes unnoticed long enough, it curdles, turns bitter in your stomach, and you don't even realize it until one sentence, one throwaway comment, splits you wide open. It was a Thursday night in April. The kind of evening where the air still held a chill but the promise of spring was crawling back into the wind. Linda was pulling a double at the hospital, something about staff shortages again. I'd come home from a long day framing a deck in Canyon, knuckles torn, knees aching. I didn't even shower, just tossed on an apron and started making dinner. Pasta, garlic bread, ribeye medium rare the way Brandon liked it. I'd seasoned it with care, even basted it in butter and thyme like I'd seen on one of those cooking shows. Something about making a meal for someone always felt sacred to me. You feed the ones you love. You fill their plate and hope it fills something else, too. He came down the stairs in gym shorts and socks, face glued to his phone like always. No hello. No, how was work? Just slouched into the chair at the island and scrolled, thumbs moving like he was trying to wipe reality away. I set the plate down in front of him, steak, pasta, bread, all still steaming. He didn't look up, just stabbed a piece of meat, chewed like it was cardboard, and said without blinking, "Real men provide and shut up." No bite in his tone, no smirk, just a flat line across his face, like he was reading off a script he'd memorized from some corner of the internet. At first, I thought I'd misheard him. I stared at the side of his face, waiting for him to flinch, to glance up, to acknowledge what he'd just dropped between us. But he didn't, just kept scrolling. That was it. That one sentence. Not shouted, not spit with venom, just said like a fact, like something he believed. Real men provide and shut up. It landed harder than if he'd screamed it. He might as well have stood up and spit on my boots. I stood there holding a wooden spoon, the smell of garlic and seared meat rising around us like a fog, and I realized he didn't see me. Not really. I wasn't a man to him. I was a service, a resource, a name on the mortgage and a warm body behind the wheel of the truck that got him to school. I wasn't his stepdad. I was the Wi-Fi, the fridge full of food, the bank account. In that moment, something inside me cracked. Not with anger, not with rage, just clarity, cold and merciless, like the lights had been on this whole time, but I'd only just opened my eyes. 5 years of sacrifice, 5 years of showing up, to every fever, every practice, every scraped knee and school fight. 5 years of swallowing my pride when he rolled his eyes, when he slammed doors, when he used silence as a weapon. I made excuses for him, told myself he was young, that he was hurting, that time would smooth the edges. But it wasn't time that was missing. It was respect. And you can't earn respect from someone who's been taught that your worth ends at your paycheck. I didn't say anything, just turned back to the stove, stirring sauce that suddenly felt too heavy. The silence between us stretched out, long and sharp like wire pulled tight. He finished half the plate, dropped his fork with a clang, and wandered back upstairs. Never said thank you, never said good night. The next morning, the plate was still there, cold, crusted with sauce, forgotten like everything else I'd ever done that didn't come with a $sign. I sat at the table long after he was gone, just staring at that plate. That crusted, empty plate that used to be a gesture of care. Now it was proof. Proof that I'd built something fragile on a foundation that was never meant to hold me. I thought about all the moments I'd poured into him. Helping him learn to drive in the high school parking lot, patient while he cursed and stalled. Taping his ankle during the playoffs. Sitting outside the ER when he busted his chin. Listening to him cuss through bloody teeth. All of it. And not once, had he looked at me like I mattered beyond what I gave. When Linda came home that night, I didn't tell her what he said. What would be the point? She'd say I was being sensitive, that he didn't mean it, that he was parroting something stupid from some podcast or video. She'd explain it away like she always did. But the thing about words is, even when you don't mean them, they reveal what's underneath. And what was underneath Brandon, what he'd been building all these years, was something cold. Something transactional. He was his father's son, after all, just with a newer phone and better shoes. I didn't eat that night, just sat outside on the porch, watching the stars fade in and out behind clouds. My boots tapped the wood, my hands curled around a warm beer, and in that stillness, I asked myself the question I never thought I'd ask. If they don't see you, if they don't value you, not as a man, not as a father, not even as a human being, what the hell are you still doing here? Christmas came like it always did. Loud, expensive, and joyless. Linda wanted to do it big that year. Said Brandon was almost grown. That we should make it special before he moved out. I took that as my cue. I ordered a custom varsity jacket from his high school colors, stitched with his graduation year. Got the latest gaming console. Not the cheaper version, the top-tier one. Even tracked down a signed football from his favorite team, something I had to pull favors for. The gifts came from my accounts, my overtime, my late nights estimating job bids until my eyes blurred. But when Brandon tore the paper off that console, he grinned wide and shouted, "He actually got it! Dad actually got it!" I stood there holding a mug of coffee. My chest tightened, not with anger, with something worse. He wasn't talking about me. He was talking about Mike. Mike, the man who hadn't been around in a decade. The man who vanished before the ink was dry on the custody agreement. Linda didn't correct him. She just smiled, sipped her cider, and looked down at her lap like it was a weather report. Unchangeable. Unimportant. That was the moment I realized I wasn't part of the holiday. I was the sponsor. The rest of the day moved in snapshots. Brandon showing off his new gear in the group chat. Linda posting pictures of the tree, tagging nobody. I watched it all from the edge of the room like a hired hand who stayed too long after the job was done. Later that night, when the dishes were stacked and the wrapping paper was bagged and forgotten, I asked Linda, soft, not angry, "You're really not going to say anything?" She looked up from her book. "Say what?" That it was me. The gifts, the money, the planning, all of it. She blinked, slowly, like she was choosing her words from a menu. "He's just a kid, Ryan. Let him have his moment." A moment. That's what my years had been reduced to. Something to be quiet about. Something to not ruin. I went out to the garage and sat in the truck for an hour, engine off, just listening to the hollow sound of my own breath. I didn't cry. I don't think I could have. The hurt didn't sit in my eyes. It sat in my ribs, like a dull drill boring slowly into bone. Graduation came in May. Brandon walked across the stage in a gown I'd paid for, in shoes I'd bought. When they handed him the diploma, he smiled for the cameras and then stepped to the mic for a short speech. He thanked his teachers, his friends, his mother. And then he said it. "I just wish my dad could be here. He'd be proud of me." The crowd clapped. Linda clapped. I sat in the third row, 2 seats away from her, my hands in my lap. I didn't move, didn't blink. I watched my years of investment walk off that stage and disappear into applause meant for someone else. She didn't look at me. Not then. Not after. Not once. We went out to dinner afterward, a steakhouse downtown. Brandon sat at the end of the table, scrolling through photos on his phone, showing Linda the ones where he looked more jacked. He never turned the screen my way. The waitress brought the check. Without a word, I slid my card across the table. No one thanked me. It hit me then, like a freight train pulling in late. Love without respect is just slow exploitation. And I had been bleeding slowly for years. A few weeks later, I pitched a trip. Said we should get away, just us. 1 week, no distractions. I found a quiet cabin out by Possum Kingdom Lake. Secluded, surrounded by pine and rock, with a dock that stretched into clean, still water. Linda seemed surprised. "That sounds nice," she said, voice flat. "You think Brandon would come?" "That's the idea." I made the reservations, took time off, booked the boat rental, stocked the fridge. $5,000, maybe more, not counting the jobs I turned down to make room in my calendar. I pictured the 3 of us casting lines at sunrise, grilling burgers by sunset. Maybe, just maybe, this would be the bridge we needed. 2 days before we left, I came home to find Linda sitting on the couch, phone in her hand, that look on her face. That halfway between apology and excuse look. "Brandon wants to bring someone," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "A friend." She looked away. "Mike." I said nothing, just stood there, keys still in my hand, the door barely shut behind me. She kept going like she had to push the words out before her courage vanished. "He reached out, said he wants to reconnect. Brandon wants him to come, just for a few days." I stared at her, wondering if she could hear the sound of everything snapping inside me. "He's still his dad," she added, as if that explained everything. Still his dad. Still. The word echoed like gunfire. I went into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water I didn't drink, and stared out the window at the dying grass. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I just stood there in silence so thick it made the air hard to breathe. The next morning, Brandon caught me in the hallway. "No hello. No build-up. You're just a guest here," he said. "We never asked for you." He didn't wait for a response. Just walked off like he'd handed me a receipt. Guest. That word stuck harder than any insult. It didn't just reduce me, it erased me. I canceled the cabin. Didn't tell them. Didn't explain. Just logged in, clicked through the reservation, and hit cancel trip. The refund wouldn't come in full. I didn't care. Some things are more costly than money. Then I opened the account labeled College, Brandon. $38,740. 12 years of savings. Late nights. Side jobs. Gone in minutes. Transferred into my business fund. I labeled the new folder Equipment and Payroll. Then I logged into the insurance dashboard. Removed Linda and Brandon from my health plan. I took them off the dental, too. Next, the phone account. 3 lines, mine, hers, his. I downgraded to 1. My phone. No more free data for texts I wasn't welcome in. Then I found Mike's old email. From one of the few times he'd reached out to reschedule a missed visit. I sent him 1 line. "Here's the FAFSA link. Your turn. https://studentaid.gov/. No greeting. No signature. Just the cold handoff of responsibility. I didn't feel triumph. Didn't feel relief. What I felt was stillness. For the first time in 5 years, the ledger was clean. Not paid in full. Just closed. Linda noticed the next day. Called me at work, voice thin and confused. "Did you cancel the trip?" "Yeah." "Why?" "Ask your son." Click. The texts came in waves after that. From her, from Brandon, even from her sister. I ignored them all. Left the phone in my truck and got back to measuring drywall and managing crews who knew how to listen when a man spoke. That night, I slept better than I had in months. No noise. No guilt. No weight pressing down on my ribs like a boot. They didn't know it yet, but I was gone. Still under the roof. Still in the house. But gone. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to plead for space in a family that had already decided I was just a placeholder. I didn't walk away from a family. I walked away from being a resource. From being the backup plan. From being the warm body they draped their needs over like a coat rack. I didn't tell anyone where I went. The morning after I moved the money and killed the plans, I packed a duffel bag with 3 shirts, a pair of jeans, my toothbrush, and the pistol I kept locked in the glove compartment. Not because I meant to use it, but because old habits die hard in Texas. I drove west without a map, past the gas stations and the open plains, until the roads stopped needing names. I found a roadside motel, the kind that still used keys instead of cards, and rented a room for the week. $79 a night. Paid in cash. I unplugged my phone. Turned the screen face down on the nightstand. The silence hit me first. That deep, empty silence that doesn't punish but purifies. No dishes clattering. No slammed doors. No footsteps overhead. Just the hum of the air conditioner and the sound of my own breathing. For the first time in 5 years, nobody needed anything from me. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff and realizing you've been falling for so long that the ground itself feels foreign. I slept for 12 hours straight the first night. Woke up stiff, disoriented, but lighter. My body didn't ache the same way. My chest didn't buzz with that constant, invisible panic I used to mistake for responsibility. When I checked my phone the next morning, there were 47 missed messages. Most from Linda, a few from Brandon, one from an unknown number, probably her sister. I didn't read them, didn't delete them either, just let them sit there like ghosts. By day 3, the motel owner started to recognize me. Old man named Frank. Thin as a rake, with tobacco-stained fingers and a limp that looked permanent. He didn't ask questions, just nodded when I came in for coffee refills. We didn't talk about family or work. Just the weather, the road conditions, the price of gas. That was enough. In that silence, something inside me began to rearrange. The noise of obligation faded, and beneath it, I could finally hear myself. That small, quiet voice that had been buried under years of guilt and compromise said, "You didn't walk out on them. You walked back to yourself." I thought about all the years I'd filled their fridge, their holidays, their future accounts. I thought about Brandon's smirk at the dinner table, about Linda's steady silence when he dismissed me, about the way she always smoothed over the cracks instead of fixing them. I'd mistaken her silence for peace, but now I saw it for what it was: cowardice. She wasn't neutral. She just never wanted to pick a side. But neutrality, in a house like ours, is betrayal wearing a soft voice. The days in that motel stretched like a bruise. I woke early, took long walks along the dry edge of the highway, counted cars like prayers. Sometimes I'd sit on the curb outside the diner and listen to other men talk. Truckers, field hands, drifters. They all had stories. Stories about what they'd lost, what they'd endured, the weight they carried without thanks. It struck me how similar we all sounded, no matter how different the details were. Men who gave until they disappeared. Men who mistook endurance for love. By the 5th day, the texts turned to calls. Then to voicemails. "Ryan, please call me. Brandon's been crying. He didn't mean it. You could have just talked to us. Please don't do this." Each one a little softer, a little smaller. Each one reaching for a man who no longer existed in the shape they remembered. I didn't answer, not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I knew any answer would only drag me back into the same cycle. Guilt, apology, temporary peace, disrespect, repeat. The house would swallow me again. The silence would return, but this time it would be the punishing kind. The silence of a man who's seen his own worth and still chooses to sell it cheap. No, I wasn't going back. On the 7th night, I sat outside the motel on a plastic chair and watched the sunset smear itself across the horizon. Orange, pink, bruised purple. I thought about the trip I'd canceled, the doc I'd never see, the laughter that would have never come anyway. I thought about Brandon at 18, a man by law but still a boy in every way that counted. And I wondered what kind of man he'd become if no one ever told him that words have weight. Maybe he'd thank me one day. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, I was done bleeding for people who mistook the wound for a faucet. 2 weeks passed before the letter came. Frank knocked on my door holding an envelope. "For you," he said. Kid dropped it off. Didn't give a name. The handwriting on the front was shaky but familiar. Brandon. I sat on the bed, turned the envelope over once, twice. For a moment, I thought about throwing it away. But curiosity is a cruel thing. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, folded unevenly. The first words were clumsy, written in the way people write when they don't know how to start. "I'm sorry. I said things I didn't mean. I was mad at my dad, but I took it out on you. You didn't deserve that. I know you did a lot for us, and I should have said thank you. I don't know if it matters now, but I'm saying it anyway." That was it. No signature, no closing line, just that. I stared at it until the words blurred. I wanted to feel something, relief, forgiveness, anything. But all I felt was the ache of timing. The quiet truth that some apologies come only when the cost of silence becomes unbearable. I folded the letter back up, slid it into the drawer beside the motel Bible, and left it there. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. A text from Linda this time. "You could have just talked to us. You didn't have to disappear. We could have worked it out." I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Then I set it down and let the light fade from it completely. Worked it out. That was her phrase for everything. Like marriage was a business negotiation. Like love could be fixed with compromise when respect had already died. She didn't understand that it wasn't the argument that broke me. It was the silence that followed every betrayal. The way she never defended me. The way she let her son learn that my sacrifices were invisible. You can't work out contempt. You can only step away from it. The next morning, I checked out of the motel. I didn't go home. I didn't even drive by. I took the long road south, no GPS, no destination. Just a map of back roads and a list of jobs I hadn't yet called back. Somewhere along the way, the world got quiet in a way I hadn't known before. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of peace. It hit me, simple and clear. I hadn't lost a family. I'd lost an illusion. The illusion that love could be earned by labor. That respect could be bought with sacrifice. That patience would someday turn mockery into gratitude. All lies. Apologies after the collapse don't rebuild the house. They just sit in the ashes, looking like remnants of something once whole. So I didn't reply. I wasn't looking to be heard anymore. I was learning how to hear myself. And in that silence, in that small, empty motel room with nothing but a duffel bag and a folded apology, I finally did. I found an apartment above a laundromat on the edge of town. The kind of place nobody dreams of but everybody passes through when life falls apart or begins again. The stairs creaked like they'd never been repaired. The windows hissed in the wind. The radiator clanged at night like it was trying to shake off its rusted chains. But it was mine. $725 a month. Utilities included. No lease. Just first, last, and a quiet handshake with the landlord who didn't ask why a man in his 40s was downsizing into solitude. I brought with me only what mattered. My tools. A battered photo of my old dog who died years back. 3 flannel shirts, a cast iron skillet, a single mattress, and a folding chair I'd used on job sites. I didn't need more. I'd spent too long buried in a house full of people who measured love by what you could buy them. Now, the silence wasn't a punishment. It was a perimeter. I started waking up before dawn again, not for work, not for obligation, just because the quiet was sacred. I'd sit by the window with coffee gone cold, watching the city open its eyes. Women carrying children, men in worn boots, no one talking, just the motion of survival. I wasn't lonely. I was finally alone. The freedom was strange at first. I'd go to the grocery store and only buy what I wanted. Eggs, bread, whiskey. I didn't worry about someone complaining there was no almond milk or protein bars. No more frozen pizzas for Brandon. No more extra-strength Tylenol for Linda's long shifts. Just me and the things I chose for myself. At night, I'd cook small meals on a single burner. One plate, one fork, one napkin. Then I'd sit on the floor with a worn paperback or let the radio hum through the static. And here's the thing no one tells you about walking away. You don't miss what you never truly had. I thought I would ache. That guilt would creep in like mold and rot out the corners of my peace. But guilt only grows when there's doubt. And I had none. They made it clear. I was a guest in that house. A wallet with a name tag. A backup plan with a pulse. Now I was a man again. Whole. Unclaimed. 2 weeks passed before the mail came. It was a small package. No return address. My name, misspelled slightly, just one letter off the way Brandon used to do on his early school forms. I opened it slowly, careful not to expect anything. Inside, a photo. Old. Bent at the corners. From a trip I had nearly forgotten. Brandon was on my shoulders, grinning wildly, arms stretched like wings. My hands held his knees. His hair was shorter then, his eyes brighter. We were standing in front of a waterfall. Some state park I dragged them to when he was 15. He hadn't wanted to go, complained the whole drive. But in that moment, frozen in film, he looked happy. On the back, written in ink so light I had to tilt it to the window to read. Thank you for being there when no one else was. No name, no date, just that. I didn't cry. I didn't pick up the phone. I didn't respond. Some things, once broken, don't get rebuilt. They just become ruins people visit when the weight of their choices catches up to them. I pinned the photo to the wall above the sink. Not out of sentiment, but as a monument. A reminder. A final receipt. That boy on my shoulders, he had once looked at me like I was safety. Like I was solid ground. I held him when his father wouldn't. Fed him when his mother was too tired to cook. I walked into a storm that wasn't mine and tried to build shelter. But they let it rot. They let the roof leak. They painted over the mold and told themselves the house was fine. And when it collapsed, they blamed the man who laid the foundation. Linda texted twice more after the photo. Once to say Brandon had deferred college. That Mike had ghosted again. That things were hard. The second text simply said, I miss you. I didn't mean to let it get this bad. I stared at that message for a long time. The ellipsis at the end like a rope thrown out to a man already ashore. But I didn't reply. Because here's the truth I learned too late. You can't teach people to value what they've already decided is free. You can't make someone see you if they only open their eyes when the lights go out. And I wasn't about to burn myself again just so they could see. Instead, I rebuilt. I picked up more jobs, ones I actually wanted. Smaller contracts. Home repairs. Odd tasks for old widows and single moms who paid late but always said thank you. People who saw me. One client, Miss Alice, asked me to fix her porch steps. She brought me lemonade and asked where my wedding ring had gone. I just said, long story, and she nodded like she already knew. You look better, she said. Like a man who's sleeping again. I was, for the first time in half a decade. My sleep was deep. My dreams were my own. No shouting. No slamming doors. No invisible weight pushing against my chest the moment I stepped inside the house. Freedom wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was the sound of my own thoughts not being interrupted by someone else's expectations. I found a second-hand couch and a better skillet. Bought myself a new jacket with my own name stitched into the lining. I lived like a man who'd stopped auditioning. And every now and then, I'd pass by a family in a park. A man pushing a stroller, a kid on his shoulders, and I'd feel that old ache rise. But it wasn't longing. It was memory. The memory of being useful. Of being needed. Of mistaking usefulness for love. One night, I found myself sitting on the fire escape, whiskey in hand, watching the laundromat lights flicker. I thought about how many loads of laundry I'd done for a boy who never once thanked me. How many meals I'd cooked. How many birthdays I'd paid for that were credited to someone else. And I smiled. Because none of it mattered anymore. Not because I didn't care. But because I cared too long. I gave my time, my money, my patience, my silence. I gave until I was empty, and when I finally stopped giving, they noticed, not because they missed me, but because they missed what I did for them. There's a difference. They mourned the faucet, not the man. And now I only give myself to those who reach for the wound, not the wallet. Brandon may come around one day. He may find me. He may say the right things, cry the right tears, promise the right future. But I've learned, once you let someone live off your sacrifices while denying your presence, you lose the right to call it family. That word family is earned, not inherited. Now, when people ask if I have kids, I just say, not anymore. And when they ask why, I say nothing, because silence finally is mine. So tell me, was I wrong to walk away? Was I cruel to demand respect before love? Or did I simply do what every man should when he realizes his love has been repackaged as obligation? Would you have stayed? Would you have endured it? Or would you have finally stood up and said, this far, no further, because I did? And peace, real peace, finally answered back, welcome home.